Welcome to today's Iris session, brought to you by BrightRock, provider of the first ever life insurance that changes as your life changes. My name is Ruda Landman. I'm filling in for David O'Sullivan, who unfortunately cannot be with us today. We are here to talk about blended families. So two partners coming together with kids from previous relationships. In a country where the divorce rate exceeds 50%, many South African families are likely to be blended. And while the union of two families is a happy change moment, every blended family has its own unique challenges, ranging from different cultures, step-parenting, relations between step and half-siblings, not to mention co-parenting with former partners and their new partners. So this session aims to unpack some of these challenges, and we'll be providing blended families with some thoughts and tips to navigate this change moment. Here to help us do that, a family like this, Matsheko Bopape. Matt, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Mark Feben, her partner. They will be telling us more about their blended family, bringing in 3 kids from your side and 1 from your side. It must be, not easy. We'll get to that. We also have Mia von Scha. She's a transformational life coach and parenting coach. How did you get into parenting coaching?
Well, I actually started off doing life coaching, and then I was trying to track back, where do all the problems come from? Why are people so insecure? Where are these issues coming from? And, you know, the more I looked at it, the more I saw it was coming from childhood. And I thought, you can't really help the children because they keep going back into that same environment, and the problems of the parents are repeating. So I thought, if we can help the parents before they pass those problems on to the kids, then that's going to be the real way to get people to be able to live out their full potential.
I wish I knew you 25 years ago. Tell me something about your story. How did you meet, and how did you decide that this was serious? This was something that had a future.
We met through a mutual friend at a comedy club. I think it was love at first sight. I know it sounds silly, but yeah, it kind of was like that. I think about 2 weeks after that, he met my family, but they didn't really know who he was, because I think his daughter came to visit, and then he just rocked up there, and they're like, who's this guy, and whose child is that? And then since then, I think it's just been trying to integrate our 2 families, you know, and
What were your biggest fears in the beginning? Because this isn't just marrying the girl next door.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated, you know. It's daunting, you know, different cultures, backgrounds, families, etc. And I think my biggest thing was obviously family. How are they going to react? How are they going to react to me dating, you know, someone new, someone different with a child, and how that's going to influence us as a family as a whole. But you know what, my family was very supportive. They've been supportive, you know, they've been very open-minded. My immediate family, my mom and my sister and them. The rest of the family, I haven't really spoken to them about it. It's probably a process. But yeah, I think that was my biggest fear of how the families would react. Yeah.
Matt, and you? Similar?
No. No, he wasn't my first interracial dating partner. So I think for my family, because I've always been very different from the rest of my family, they kind of expected it. So it wasn't that much of a big difference. But I think because of the dynamics of 3 kids, 1 kid, and trying to put that together, I think for my family it was like kind of a concern in terms of how are we going to integrate our 2 families. That was the biggest problem, not necessarily the different cultures and skin color.
How did you introduce your children to the new idea and the new person?
Well, I think our first one, we actually did a play date. We actually took them to a place, and they all sat together and they started playing together. And then his daughter, who was 9 at the time, loved my daughter. So she's like, can I please sleep over? So, and then since then, those 2 actually started the whole communication, becoming friends. And then that's how we then introduced everybody else into a circle. I think their bond made it easier for the rest of us to integrate the families.
And your older daughter, you have a daughter of 15?
15, yeah, turning 16. she's a bit of a tomboy and stuff, and like being the older one, she's like the rescuer and the helper, you know, she's like always looks after everyone. So for her at first, I thought she'd have a bit of an issue adapting or dealing with it, but she actually took to it quite well. You know, she's old enough where I could sit down with her and explain to her this. And
Did
this
you
is
do
the
that?
Yes, I sat down. We've got a very open relationship with her. I'm very honest with her, and you know, even though she's a child, I sort of try and be honest with her. And I sat down and told her the situation, and she, you know, she said, "But Dad, it's going to be a bit difficult for me, you know, this whole new idea." But she took to it quite quick. And now it's fine.
Mia, what would you, if they had come to you right in the beginning,
Yes.
thinking maybe we might be able to build something here, what would you advise parents in that kind of situation?
Well, I think if you're right at the beginning, my first advice would be take it slow. You know, for children, especially if you've come out of a divorce, there's a lot of change going on, and that can be just another change on top of a change. And, you know, when we go through change naturally as human beings, we go into fight or flight. That's a normal response to change. So if you've got children coming into a new home, then they can't flee, and the natural response then becomes fight. And that can be very challenging as a step parent, you know, to deal with a child who's in that fight mode. And the longer you leave it between the breakup of one relationship and the start of the next relationship, the more likely the children are to integrate and to accept that. So that would be my first thing I would say, is just go slow.
And do teenagers respond differently from the younger ones? You said your daughter was?
She was 6. Yeah,
She was 6,
Yeah.
and the other one, her friend,
was 9.
was 9.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between someone at 15 and children under 10, more or less?
Absolutely. I mean, I think as Mark was saying, with the older children, you can have those conversations.
And should you?
And I would definitely, the more you communicate with the kids, the better, at whatever age. But the older kids are more likely to understand what's going on and have some empathy for the parent. And they also tend to be getting on with their own lives at that age. They're not as enmeshed in the family. Whereas you'll find probably the most difficult age is somewhere between 9 and 14, the tweens and the early teens, where they're already going through change within themselves, and they're at that point where they're a bit disagreeable with adults in their lives, you know, and then to introduce step parents, and there's often confusion about, can I discipline this child? Do I discipline them? And that can become a challenge with a child who's in those difficult years.
Mark, you were nodding about that. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, you know, we've both come from different parenting styles.
Yeah.
Like when I was married to my first wife, the way we raised our kids is totally different to the way Mats raised her daughter. And
Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
like disciplining, rules, boundaries, those kind of things. Like I think me and Mats, we were very naive in the beginning, thinking, you know, it's going to be easy and like we're going to have the same parenting style. And it's been a bit of, you know, hitting heads and not arguing but disagreeing on certain things.
So
and
you are stricter.
like as a father I should be, but I'm more of a bit more relaxed. Like kids can get away with a bit more.
Oh.
Mats is a bit more the set rules and stuff
Oh.
and sticks to it. So I was a bit more laid back with my rules and that kind of stuff. And I think that's the thing that's important, is getting together. And
How did that play out? Tell me. Can you remember an
Yeah.
occasion where things went wrong?
I think in the beginning I think kids were over for the weekend or something, and then I know how my daughter goes to bed at 7:30 and all
Yeah.
these things. Those things that she knows, like since she was a baby, it's routine. So coming in with his kids there, and then it's 7:30, and I'm like, go to bed, good night, and then his kids are still up, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'm tired now, you know. And for him, it's like, no, but they can stay up until whatever time. I'm like, in my mind, it's like I can't deal with this change. So that's when we decided to sit together and formulate house rules that will work for both of us, you know, and then trying to implement those house rules between us, because then both of us agreed on what we're going to do going forward. And I think it's been, doing that, it's been a slow change and everything, because most of them is things that I know and my daughter knows, and for him it's a bit of a change. But slowly but surely, I think the kids are also adjusting to that scenario and stuff.
Yeah. It's difficult, like, because at each home where they are, you know, there's different rules and different routines. So moving from us to, say, from my parents and to my the exes and that kind of stuff, there's certain rules at certain places. So I think they sort of lose identity. With my middle daughter, she finds it very difficult adapting to when she's with us, to certain rules, when she's with my parents or with her mom. So and especially she's turning 11, so for her, it's difficult adapting and like the constant moving between places.
So what's your advice in that regard?
What I generally suggest is that as the children move from one home to the other, that there's some kind of transition ritual. And it really helps, just something that can go, we're going from this environment here, which is like this, and this environment is completely different. And what we often expect children to do is we pick them up, we plop them down in this environment and just get on with life. And if there's some kind of transition ritual, for instance, it can be as simple as, well, when you get dropped off, we go outside and we kick the ball around the garden for half an hour. And it's just our time to connect and to slow down before you're expected to just slot into another rhythm. And those rhythms can be very different from one house to another.
Does one have to talk about it?
I don't even know if you would need to, depending on the child and the age of the child. I think if you can just help them to
as long as you are aware,
slowly. Yes, if you're aware and you slow down as that change happens, you know, then you can be very present with them. And in that ritual, you will also pick up on if they're coping or not coping, or if there are issues that are coming up. You know, where often we're so involved with the busyness of our lives that the child gets dropped off and we go, and we keep just getting into what we're doing, and we forget that it's in those little moments that children do the make or break.
It's a very aware kind of life.
Yes.
Is part of what you're saying, that one cannot do this summer. You actually have to think about it.
Yeah, it's a lot of planning, a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifice. It's not easy. It is difficult. You know, we've got 5 kids between the two of us, ranging from almost 16 to almost a 1-year-old. And then with our busy lives and schedules and work, and it becomes sometimes not unmanageable, but you know, you've really got to focus, and it's not always easy. You know, life happens, and you've just got to make the best of it, I suppose.
To the audience out there, some people are watching live on Facebook. Please contact us. It would be lovely to have your views and your experience, maybe, and your questions. So how do you do that? Do you make like a date night? A discussion time where you, my brother, I know, had this with, he has 4 kids, an older one and then twins and then a younger one. And they had an evening a week where they would literally sit around the table and say, this happened this week that I didn't like.
Yes.
My parents would spin in their graves, but anyway. Do you do something almost formalized like that? Not really.
No, we don't do that. Like, how we've decided to do our parenting is we have a set of rules that we literally put up in the house. So they know the rules.
How did that come about? There must have been a discussion.
Yeah. Well, it started off mostly with just the two of us making those decisions. I mean, we've been doing a lot of reading, and we've started to realize that we started creating vision boards now, where we want the kids to actually come in, and we all creating a vision board for this year of what we're going to do this year and all that. But I think based on what the rules say, we'll say, okay, the rules say this. So if you misbehave, you'll have like your 3 warnings, and then you have your time out or whatever. So they genuinely know what the rules are, and they know if they break them, they know what the consequences are. So we never really have like a week-on-week conversation. Maybe it's something we do need to do, because we do realize there are 5 kids, and all of them have very different personalities. And I think sometimes we get lost in the rush of everything, where you don't actually take time to say, hey, how are you today? Are you good? What's happening? And then I think maybe that will be something we do need to do. Eh? I think that will help us.
And because 5 kids, it's literally a handful. And they are from 16 to 1.
Yeah.
So how do you find the headspace to focus on everyone. You just have
We've got lots of help.
from family.
From family,
and
yes.
families
No,
are very
we're very
supportive.
fortunate to have very supportive families. So they do help out a lot.
How did the older kids react to a new little one who now belongs to the two of you in a way that the others maybe feel that they don't?
Oh, they love her.
Yeah,
Really?
it was,
Is it just a new doll?
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, they love her so much. Like,
yeah.
it's actually amazing how much they actually love her. Like, they literally, all of them just want to be around her all the time and pick her up and everything, you know. So it's actually been very easy.
Yeah.
It's been very, very easy.
Can that be problematic, Mia?
It can be, but I wouldn't say any more problematic than a new baby in any family. You know, that can be a challenge for any child, and that really depends on the children's personalities and on how the parents handle it. So if they handle it well and they give the kids fair warning about how things are going to be and what it's going to be like with a new baby, especially for the younger ones who are used to maybe mom's attention more. And I think often for the baby of the family, it's the most difficult. So if you've been the baby and you've always been the baby of the family and now there's a new baby, you've lost your status, really.
Yeah.
And that can be challenging. So, you know, how the parents handle that can make a big difference.
You say if they handle it well, what does that mean?
Well, I think, you know, again, communication is very important.
So talk to the little one.
Talk
Even
to the
if
little-
he's or she is 3 or 4?
Yeah, even if they're 2 or 3. I mean, we assume that children don't understand because they can't speak, but they understand a lot more than we give them credit for. So chat to them, you know, reading them books or watching movies where there's been a similar situation can be helpful. Sometimes if it's somebody else's issue,
Yes.
you can just infer from that. And children love stories, so that's a good way to deal with it. And then, you know, if there's going to be major changes, is to start making those changes before the baby comes.
So someone has to move out of a room, for example. Something
Exactly.
like that.
Or the high chair that used to be this one is now going to be the baby's, or the cot or something like that. You start making those changes before the baby comes along. If dad is going to take more responsibility for that child, then those things need to be put in place beforehand so that that resentment of the change doesn't get put onto the baby.
On a practical level, how does one handle finances when you're both obviously grown-up people with your own set of circumstances, and now you have to share and work out what is paid for out of the kitty and what is my responsibility and what is yours. How did you go about that?
We've been very open about finances. We're fortunate to both have work, and I think like we've been open and honest about, okay, this is my share, this is your share. Sort of, I take care of my 3 kids, you take care of your first kid, and together we take care of and we share everything. We sort of food, or we help each other out. We've been very open and honest about, you know, what our roles are. And it's not easy. 5 kids are very expensive, as we know. Like, life is expensive. It's school fees and it's activities and it's extramurals, and it's not always easy. It's tough. We do get a lot of help and support as well. But yeah, it's just communication, I guess.
And do you, well, maybe not physically, maybe it's a bank account, but do you have a shared source of money where you both pay in and things like groceries are bought out of that, or is it more organic?
But, yeah, for
Yeah, it's very
instance, we've got a nanny that helps. Mats pays for the nanny. I, for instance, buy the groceries. So we look at what we can afford, who can do what, and we just do it.
So you split the functions
Yeah.
almost. Yeah. We do that to a large extent as well.
Yeah.
Money can be really the source of lots and lots of problems.
Yes.
What have you come across?
You know, I find that money problems often come in, especially in a second marriage, where there's been issues with money in the first marriage and that hasn't been healed. And then you're already suspicious of the other person or squirreling away your money. And, you know, you really need trust and transparency. So like you were saying, that communication, if you have open communication about what's going on, and if you feel resentful, if the other partner is, for instance, buying their children something and you feel it isn't fair on your child, to actually bring those things up immediately before it sits there and becomes something that builds in the background. And I think those kind of things can be an issue because it's very complicated, finances with a blended family. You've got two people with different incomes, you've got maintenance going out or coming in, you've got different numbers of children, you've got 3, you've got the 1, so how do you create equality in that situation? Can be very challenging. So what I generally say to couples is have a date night, which is your money night. Have a money date, and you can open a bottle of wine and order some takeout and sit around with your budgets so that you know what you're spending. I mean, it's good financial habits anyway.
Yeah.
And then to be transparent with each other, who's spending on what, who's saving on what, so that there isn't resentment somewhere down the line.
How do you keep that from turning into a fight?
Well, yes, I suppose it could very easily go there. And I think that's a ground rule that you set when you decide on your money date. You say money dates are going to be a good environment. You can light some candles, set it up so that it feels like a date. It feels like a time where you're becoming intimate with each other. And then when you start discussing that, you just keep that ground rule. This is not going to be a fight, it's a discussion. It's just about transparency, about communication, about figuring out what's going on.
Because money goes to your deepest sense of security.
Yes.
And if that is threatened, the fight or
Yes.
flight thing can kick in very easily.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think if you are constantly coming into a fight in a situation like that, is to rather get help. Get someone who can advise you, who can sit down with you, and then your money date becomes once a month with an external party who says, look, that isn't making sense right now, or why are you not contributing to your RA, or whatever the case may be, but someone who's objective.
And who can say, you've spoken enough now, your turn.
Yes.
How does it work with the exes? Your kid's mum, your daughter's dad? What role do they play, and how do you navigate that?
My ex-wife moved quite far away. The kids don't live with her, and she hasn't really been involved with, let's say, with our relationship. We sort of, this is us, that's you. When it's about the kids and concerns the kids, then we involve her, then she's involved. But other than that, she doesn't really play a big role or has any influence.
Have you
us.
tried to involve her, for example, on a birthday or something like that? Make a kind of general celebration where everyone's is there? No. And on your side, Matt?
I kind of have almost the same situation as him. Well, my daughter's dad does see her every second weekend and stuff like that, but he's not very involved in our relationship at all.
Does that make it simpler?
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for us it's been, I think maybe because of how our relationships were with them, it's just easier for us to, okay, when you're picking up the kids, when you're dropping them off, and that's it. There's nothing else we need to talk about.
It's not overcomplicated with anything else.
Yeah.
How long was the break, if I can put it like that, between that relationship breaking up and you meeting each other?
I met Matt, I think, 9 months after I got divorced. And
and
nice
me,
pregnancy.
and
which was
for
very
me, it
soon.
was about 3 years.
So there
Yeah.
was a very, and that must also make it easier if there is a real clear break.
Yes.
It's
yes.
not,
Both for the people getting married and for the children, is you want to be clear of that last relationship. You want your divorce completely finalized. You want to emotionally have dealt with what you went through, because it can be very traumatic going through a divorce. And, you know, if you go into your next relationship carrying all that baggage from the last relationship, you're destined for problems. I mean, your second marriages, we talk about the first marriage having a 50% divorce rate, but the second marriage is 67 to 70% divorce rate. So you really, really want to be very clear when you go into that next relationship that this is what you want and that you're not coming in with a whole pile of baggage from the past.
And I mean, often the two relationships are not as separate.
Yes.
So what is your advice there? Just hang on. Don't jump into, I mean, bed is one thing, but a house, setting up a house is another thing.
Yes, I think often, you know, you do meet somebody even while you're still in a relationship,
Yes.
and that can be the cause of the end of
Yes.
the relationship. So it does happen, and it happens more often than would be great. But like you say, you can have a relationship, but once you start involving the children and setting up a new home, that's a completely different ballgame. You know, children, when they've just come out of a divorce, they're already feeling hurt and betrayed, and that lack of trust, they will then carry into that relationship with the step-parent if that's too sudden. So you can have your relationship and have fun on the side, but wait before you involve the children, and definitely before you move in together. But again, it happens that people financially, it makes more sense for them to move in together than have two separate homes. So, you know, then you have to make it work. And in that case, I would say you've got to give the kids a lot of extra support.
As in?
As in, whether that's a therapist or an aunt or a teacher or somebody who can listen objectively, where that child has the opportunity to vent their feelings without being judged for that. We have a saying that, you know, the bad feelings have to come out before the good feelings can come in. And if they don't feel safe to do that within that new home because it's too new and too foreign, then all of that repressed anger, you know, it can display as harm towards the child themselves, or misbehavior at school, or resentment and anger towards the step-parent. There's so many issues that can arise if that's not dealt with well.
How do you build a relationship with your stepchildren?
Again, slowly. You know, I often think about going into a blended family as moving into a commune. You know, if you moved into a commune, suddenly you're living with people that you don't know, you don't necessarily like, but you're having to share a kitchen and a bathroom and living space with them. So how would you handle that? And if we stop thinking about it as a parent-child relationship, which implies hierarchy and discipline and things like that, and we think about it as human relationships, how do you build a new relationship? You do it slowly, and you do it with respect. So you don't go bursting into somebody's room or insisting that they hug you or anything like that. You know, you take it slow, you get to know each other. So spend time, quality time, and their family meals can be a fantastic way of doing that, you know, where everyone sits together for a meal. And, you know, what we have in our house is a jar on the table with questions. And we pick a question, and it can be, well, if you were president, what 3 things would you change? Or, you know, just questions that can stimulate conversation, exactly. And through that, you get to know the different members of the family, what they like, what they don't like. And then you build relationships based on respect for that.
It strikes me that the one thread that runs through all of this is time and attention.
Yes.
Don't just carry on with your own life and don't even see the other people around you.
Well, we assume, you know, that the kids are going to have the same enthusiasm we have. You know, we're going into a new relationship and it's exciting and you're infatuated and it's this new start for you, and, you know, you've got all these hopes for this future, and your children are just get dragged along with it, whether they like it or not, and they may have a lot of reservations about that new relationship.
Can you remember meeting the 15-year-old for the first time? She was 14 then, I suppose.
Yeah, I can. I was very, very nervous. Because I was like, this is my first teenager that I have to now deal with and try to make it. But it was very easy. I think like what she says, you have to build a relationship. We started talking about music and general things, and then from there, like me and her started going on movie dates together and stuff like that. And I think from there, that's when we started building the trust. Like now, she can send me a please call me, and I call her, or she sends me on WhatsApp or whatever. And if she asks me to come pick her up, I'll come pick her up. You know, so we are building our own relationship based on. I think for us right now, it's a friendship more than anything else. It's not okay, you're daddy, you're not daddy's girlfriend or daddy's wife or whatever. We friends first, and then everything else comes after. And then like she said, mutual respect is how we.
It's been 2 years. Next month we'd be together for 2 years. And in the beginning we thought, like you said, the infatuation and it's new and everything, but it's been 2 years, and it's constant building. And communication, and it's been tough, and it's still going to be a long process. We've got to understand it's not just us. We love each other, but we've got to think about the kids and their roles and how they're feeling, and it's not always easy.
What were the hairiest moments, the most difficult, the most challenging?
Driving somewhere. Driving with 7 people in one car. We've got to take 2 cars if we want to go somewhere. So driving.
So trips to the coast.
Yeah, trips down to the coast. We need 2 cars. But I think going out in public, I think is a big thing.
We haven't spoken about that. I mean, a relationship like yours in South Africa.
We wondered what the kids would feel like, how they would handle being exposed to certain things. So what has been your experience going out in public together as a mixed race family?
Yes, we've had a couple.
It's been interesting.
And the thing is, it's always different. It's always the same reaction with different circumstances. Like if I'm with him, you'll always get the looks. Or if I'm walking with our daughter and his kids, not my daughters, but with his kids, everybody goes like, it's like, what's going on here? Or when we went camping, and it's like a very Afrikaans campsite, and then you have people leaving the pool as soon as the black chick gets into the water. That's been kind of the situations that you get stuck in, and you don't really know. I think for me, it's been more about how is it affecting the kids more than us, because we're older, we've been through a lot. So I think for me, especially with his oldest daughter, thinking how is she reacting to seeing people of her own race doing what they're doing because of her step parent, me. And I think sometimes I've seen her looking a little disappointed in other people, and it's sad. It kind of hurts,
Questioning.
It's like,
And do you talk to each other then? Do you talk to her about it? How do you handle it?
We do. I think based on what Mark was saying earlier about the fact that we raised him very differently, and the fact that his background and mine are very different. Like when she came into the relationship with kind of certain preconceptions of black people, and I think when she met me, it was kind of like completely changed. So she'll talk to. She's very open with me. She'll tell me, "Oh my gosh, sometimes when I walk past a black person, I get very scared." And I ask her why, and she goes, "It's a black person, a big black man." I'm like, "But I get exactly the same way, whether it's a black person or a white person. If it's a scary person, then you get scared. Like I don't base it on the color of the skin. It's more about your character. If your character is not good, then yes, you'll be scared. But don't look at somebody's skin color and judge them on that." And I'll tell her, like, "What are you basically teaching Kaylin? Kaylin is a mixed race baby, our daughter. So what are you teaching her? She can't base herself on whether she's white or black. She is a person. Doesn't matter what the color of her skin is. She's a person, and that's what we want to raise her as, and what we want to raise the rest of them as being people first."
But how do you help them cope with discrimination? Discrimination is maybe not the right word. With people looking at them askance, at you as a family.
I think we use humor a lot. We try and make it light or not as serious, and teach them through humor. And I think readings match. We talk to them about.
I think also like exposing them to different things and watching movies with the way they talk about race and all that stuff. Like I think now they're starting to understand why, you shouldn't look at a person and say, oh, because of you this color, it means that you're going to be this kind of person. And them knowing that it's more about deciding if the person is good based on their character is more important.
So you're breaking down their stereotypes.
Which they were taught by society. It's not anything that we did. You know, like especially with your oldest daughter, with Mark's oldest daughter, it's that. It wasn't anything that he did. He's not that person. But because of everybody else around her and the things that they teach her, it really, like in the beginning, it really hurt me because it's like, I can't believe that society has made a 16-year-old girl think like this. You know, I mean, stereotyping people in that way, and it's wrong. And obviously it comes sometimes from school or wherever it is. So it was very, I think,
Do
very,
you
very
also
tough.
sometimes get that kind of reaction from your black community? People in not really, not so much.
No, not from my side. I mean, like I think from my side, I've got a big variety of different colored friends and everything.
You live in a mixed community,
Very mixed
actually.
community.
Yeah.
My daughter has not even realized anybody's color until her dad asked her, so your mom's boyfriend is white? And she was like, Mommy, is Mark white? I'm like, who told you that? You know? But she never realized color until that moment when her dad told her that. I'm like, Mark is Mark. Doesn't matter what color he is, Mommy loves him. That's all that matters.
A friend of mine had a little, she still has him, but when he was little, her son said he wanted to bring a friend home for the weekend, and she said she just wanted to, this is now 25 years ago, she just wanted to know what she was dealing with, and she said, is he your black friend? And he thought for a while, and then he said, no, he's actually a bit orange. So, you know, specific advice in a cross-cultural relationship?
I think what they're doing is exactly right, is handling it with humor and then giving information. You know, what we want to do with children is actually help them to understand how other people see the world and that they don't all see it the same. And we can even create empathy for those people with their racist attitudes that, you know, where did they come from? And what were they taught? And how did they grow up to come to a place where they could judge someone like that? Again, stories can be fantastic. There's a Dr. Seuss one about the Sneetches, you know, which there's the star belly Sneetches and the plain belly Sneetches, and they won't mix. And it's just such a beautiful illustration of that children can see, well, it doesn't matter if you have a star or you don't have a star, if you have this color skin or that color skin. And I think families like this are so important in this country for shifting those entrenched mindsets. And the more we see of this and the more you guys tell your story, the more open we'll become to that, and it won't be such a strange thing where people are staring at you and getting out the pool.
That's a bit rough. I really wouldn't have expected that today.
No.
Yeah, you'd expect after 20, 25 years or even longer that the people's mindsets have changed and the outlook. But unfortunately, it's still, people still judge and people still, you know, stereotype.
They'll ask you, so what language are you going to teach her? And like, our family literally has so many different cultures. We've got Zulu, we've got Sotho, we've got Afrikaans, we've got English. She's going to learn everything. So it doesn't, for us, it's not about, okay, she's going to identify as a black person or a white person. It's more like she's a person. So what does it matter what her skin color means? It doesn't mean anything.
And do you find that in South Africa at this point there is a kind of mixed community, so that you don't have to make those choices anymore? You don't have to decide, do I send my child to a English school or an Afrikaans school or a majority Zulu school or whatever, that there is space which is neutral? Not yet.
Yeah, there is. I think it's the school part is fine, but I think it's more like when they're out in society that's the problem. Like
It's not
when we're
really
thinking about where we're gonna go on vacation and you try to find the place that's more neutral than less Afrikaans or less black or whatever. Just trying to find
But
situations.
we can't live our lives
Yeah.
on other people's expectations or, you know, like we just living. We like doing what we want to do. If that person's got a problem with it, that's their problem. We can't change that. And we can't live in fear or anything. And it's our lives, you know. It's our family and we're doing what we can.
From your experience, advice to people going into this?
Take it slow. Yeah, we've had some bumpy roads and learned from our mistakes, but yeah, no, it's a time thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think also like realizing that every kid is an individual, and the fact that we're in love doesn't mean that they will love each other. You know, and allowing them to also build their relationships organically and not force them to
I think
be in those
personality and
situations.
identity is a big thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's different.
Yeah.
And I can't force my identity or personality on someone else. Everyone's unique in their own way. And you've got to create that in your child. Make them believe in themselves, values, morals, principles, all those things. And that's all you can do is do that in your child, or entrust it in your child.
And the fact that he or she is still young
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there's no personality yet, and you can
Yeah.
just force it into
Yeah.
into a box. Mia, last word from you.
I would say manage your expectations. I think we go into any relationship with a whole bunch of expectations and fantasies about how it's going to be. And especially coming from possibly a troubled relationship, going into a new relationship, you're thinking, this is it, it's going to be so much better, it's going to be calmer. And all families have conflict. That's normal part of life. You know, siblings are going to fight, whether they're from the same original family or not. And couples are going to fight. And it's not necessarily about being from a blended family, it's just about human relationships.
Thank you so much. This has been really informative, and it's about us being humans.
Yes.
All of the very best to the two of you, and
you.
anyone out there who's watching this and having plans. I hope it goes very, very well, and I hope you've learned something. Until the next time, goodbye.